Patience, the Art of Active Waiting. And it is based on the story of the fig tree that was read just now. Several years ago, I was fortunate to meet a young, interesting African student named Kosi Ayedsi, who had come to Princeton Theological Seminary to pursue a PhD degree in the history of Christian thought. He was from Togo, West Africa, and he spoke both French and English. Togo was at one point a German colony, and then in 1884 it was divided up amongst the English and the French. And so there was one section of Togo which is French-speaking, according to the colonial language, and another section that is English-speaking. And he came from the French-speaking area, and French was his first colonial language, though English was his second colonial language. He was a marvelous person. His wife and two elementary school sons soon joined him. And when I asked him about the subject matter of his doctoral research, he said that he wanted to study the virtue of patience in the thought of St. Augustine. And at a time when Africa was moving quickly towards dismantling all the trappings of colonialism, I asked him about the contemporary relevance of such a theme. And he immediately responded by saying that since Augustine was one of Africa's fathers, his relevance should be obvious. He then proceeded to say that in the vacuum created by decolonization, newly independent African nations must not act precipitously. Rather, they should exercise all appropriate caution before making any significant social changes. Premature action can cause much harm, and thus waiting for the right time to act is a necessary virtue. Such waiting is not passivity. Every good military officer appreciates that principle of waiting for the right time, as does every member of an orchestra. Human beings have always known the wisdom underlying the art of active waiting. They have always known that it takes months for a fetus to mature in utero before birth. And farmers have always known that a period of active waiting is necessary between the planting season and the time of harvest. When Mohandas Gandhi decided to launch his nonviolent resistance campaign against British colonial rule, he knew that his desired outcome would take a long time of faithfully practicing the art of active waiting. And when Martin Luther King Jr. followed a similar pursuit in Montgomery in 1955, he also knew that staying the course was a necessary virtue. Both men, both King and Gandhi, on different continents, became martyrs to their respective causes and did not live to see the final outcome of their actions. And Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison on Robben Island because he refused to rescind his membership in the African Nationalist Congress. And in 1992, he was released, soon became the first black president of an independent South Africa and a shared recipient of the Nobel Peace Prize. Every athlete also knows that he or she must put in their active waiting time, called practice or training, before they are eligible to play. No one ever entered a marathon race without the necessary preparation. Similarly, every professional must spend the necessary time learning and mastering the so-called basics. And active church members happily spend time preparing spiritually and programmatically for the two major annual church festivals, Christmas and Easter. Earlier in this service, we read the parable of the fig tree. It always seemed to me that the man was wholly irrational to condemn the fig tree because it had no figs when he wanted some. Such would be similar to going to the refrigerator to get something with which to make a sandwich and discovering there was nothing there that was suitable for making a sandwich. Should one then get rid of the refrigerator? Certainly not. Rather, one should actively wait the result of some necessary grocery shopping. Now, it is always important to allow sufficient time for preparation. Allowing too little time puts one in the position of the man who went too soon to look for fruit on the fig tree. Allowing more time than needed runs the risk of the fruit being overly ripened and spoiled, but allowing an adequate amount of time is absolutely necessary. I vividly remember being in 6th grade, and after looking at some of the high school's kids, I thought that it would take forever for me to reach that goal when I would be nearing the end of high school, when I would be all grown up, and as I thought, knew everything. Later reflections on this matter revealed how naive I was. Rarely are we fully ready for the task at hand. I have a friend who lives in Maine, Topsham, Maine, whose hobby is woodworking. In addition to building his own sailboat and a barn, most of the things he has built were requested by family members and friends. They have included such things as toy boxes, bedside cabinets, side tables, plant stands, hall tables, special mementos, jewelry boxes, picnic tables, magazine racks, bookcases, and a cremation urns for both his friends as well as for his wife and himself. The latter, for his wife and himself, have not yet been done, and he recently said in his own memoir that he needs to get to that soon. The process of each item takes time, ranging from the design, the delicate decision of choosing the particular type or combination of woods, to the construction by the precise cutting of the pieces, gluing them together, and finally sanding them with very fine grades of sandpaper. From beginning to end, each stage of the process requires a considerable amount of patience or active waiting in the form of appropriate thought. No human project required more preparatory thought than that of space travel and exploration. The art of landing a team of humans on the moon was both a complex and dangerous enterprise. Nonetheless, in the midst of such anxiety, Apollo 11 landed successfully on the moon on July the 20th, 1969, in the Sea of Tranquility, a phenomenal accomplishment. And 6 hours after landing, the crew opened the door, and Neil Armstrong left the cabin. And as he stepped onto the moon, he spoke the words, the memorable words, "One step for man, and one giant leap for mankind." This was at 2:56 a.m. Eastern Standard Daylight Time on that particular day. One can only imagine the vast amount of active waiting the astronauts underwent during their many years of preparation. In 1972, Apollo 17 landed the last humans on the moon. But 2 years earlier, in 1970, a near-tragic event had occurred with Apollo 13, which captured the attention of the world. Unfortunately, its landing on the moon had to be aborted after an oxygen tank explosion that threatened many other systems on board, including the lives and the safety of the 3 astronauts. Fortunately, after much uncertainty, amidst the process of active waiting, they were returned to Earth successfully, much to the joyful relief of all who were riveted to their TVs throughout those anxious hours. Now, what does the parable of the fig tree teach us about God? It teaches us that God is the creative power of active waiting that pervades the depth and origin of the universe and all that is. God is infinite patience. God is the power of all creativity, beginning with the earth and all that inhabits it, both animate and inanimate. And in the case of the barren fig tree, the message is that God will provide the desired fruit in due course, after appropriate watering and fertilizing, and an appropriate amount of time. And so, in the midst of our present political turmoil that threatens the present state of the world order, let us patiently but actively wait on God, the source of all that is creative and good and life-sustaining. And may God bless you as you wait on God. And now is the time for you to share any thoughts that you might have at this time.
Thank you, Peter. The stories about all the space things makes me think about the most recent space where they came back after they'd been up there for 9 months. Talk
Yes.
about having to have patience,
Right.
you know.
Yes.
They were there for much longer than they ever thought they were going to have to be, and the landing and the pod of dolphins that greeted them, I
Yes.
thought was like a message from God to
Yes.
say that we really are connected from Earth to space and all around. It was a beautiful, meant a lot to me to see that and be able to, and because I'm retired, I was able to sit and watch that on
Yes.
television when it
Yes.
was happening. So
Yes.
it was good. I also like the parable about the fig tree, because I never realized how a fig tree had to wait so long
Yes.
to be able to produce the right kind of fruit. You know, I just thought, well, it's just like any other tree. It just you plant it and it bears fruit that next season. But fig
Yes.
trees didn't do that, and I guess in my viewpoint, it was like Jesus was in human form. He was expecting that to be there, you know, and available at the time. And we expect that too.
Yes.
And sometimes our expectations don't happen, and we have to be patient and wait. And
Yes.
and celebrating my 85th birthday, I'm thinking, I don't have patience anymore. My time is running out, so I need to see results soon, you know. But yeah, it's a good message. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you very much, Judy. Thank you for your comments. Much appreciated. Yes, Alex.
Thank you. I just think it's interesting that this is what the sermon was about when a few days ago it's like that's what was revealed to me, because when you see kind of like the whole world on fire with wars and everything that's happening within our own country, it's just like, when is it like going to change? When is it going to get better? When like, I'm kind of angry because I'm like, I want to see something now. And just every morning, or whatever time of day, I pray about it. And that's what was revealed to me, was to wait and have patience, because in the time when we pray for it and when it happens, there is that waiting period where we can't see what God is doing, behind the scenes. We don't know how God is moving, what He's putting into place for it to happen, so it just was like reminded, to me that I have to wait, and in that waiting process, I am going to do what I can and do my part to participate in the change that I want to see. But in the meantime, I just have to sit and wait and, just know that God has it. Once we pray about it, and I know I'm not the only one in the room that's praying about it, or there's so many of us that are praying for that change. So, we just have to be patient and wait and see what God is going to do. So I think it was very interesting that this is what the sermon was about, when like a couple days ago it's like, this is what was, brought to my attention. So it's like, now I just look up and say, okay, God, I get what you're telling me.
Good. Thank you, Ellie. Thank you for those thoughts, those good thoughts.
Thank you, Peter. It's a great reminder that a lot of us don't think about on a regular basis, I think. And just thinking of what happened to me yesterday, I packed my SUV up with all the baked goods, and I'm going to drive slow. I don't want anything tipping over on a quick turn or whatever. And there's a black truck behind me, and he was getting so mad at me. And I see him, and I looked in the rearview mirror, and he's flashing his high beams at me. He's giving me the finger, and I'm like, patience, buddy, patience, And then I rolled down my window, and I'm, waving him to go on, and I kind of pulled over. And as he passes me, he's giving me the finger again, and I'm like, whoa. And I thought, wow, like, he needs to learn, like, and I thought, well, maybe I should have had a sign on my window, like, baked goods, and, like, driving slow drive or whatever. But what came to me was, I got to pray for him.
Yeah.
Like, my first thing was, like, what is the matter with you? And then it was like, well, he needs prayer, because something must be going on in his life that got him so riled up that me driving a little bit slower totally pissed him off. So, yeah, it ended up me praying for him and just hope that he finds some peace, and he needs to slow down and have more patience with life. But, yeah, it was quite an experience yesterday. But
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. Road rage is a terrible thing, yeah. And lots and lots of horrible things have happened because people have gotten overly anxious. The traffic,
I think another good analogy that comes to mind with that active waiting, we have a coworker who does pottery,
Uh-huh.
and she's taking some classes, and she's brought stuff in, and she's
Uh-huh.
selling it, at the office. But when I ask her about how it's going, and she's describing, she's doing this first step, which is the creating, but then the pot has to sit
Yeah.
for a time, and
Yeah.
it's not finished, and then she can be envisioning maybe what she's going to be putting on as far as the glazes, but then you put the glaze on, but then it has to go in the kiln, and
Yeah.
it's going to come out differently, but you don't necessarily know at the beginning, because sometimes those glazes just do what they're going to do, but it's not she doesn't do it in one session. I mean, it's over weeks and weeks and weeks before the product is finished, and the fire, right, is a part of that process to come out with this beautiful thing that really doesn't start out that attractive.
Mhm.
But in the eye of the creator, they can see something that those of us who aren't skilled in that, kind of look at and go, okay.
Yes, yes, yeah, good. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Good, good. Well, thank you all for sharing your thoughts that add to the creation of this sermon. So thank you. And now let us hear the sighs on the sparrow. Do we have any sound? Yeah. Okay.